On my recent trip to Tokyo and Mount Fuji, I brought three lenses: the Sony 35mm f1.8, the TD-Arson 75mm f2, and the Tamron 28-200mm f2.8 to 5.6. But honestly, I barely touched the other two. The Tamron was on my camera 90% of the time because it was just way more versatile. If you want just one lens that does it all, this is it. The 28-200mm range covers pretty much everything. I could go from wide cityscapes in Tokyo to tight telephoto shot of Mount Fuji without ever changing lenses. When shooting with my 35 or 75mm primes, I had to move around a lot to frame my shots, which wasn't always practical in crowded streets. With the Tamron, I could adapt instantly, perfect for street photography, landscapes, and even portraits and food. At first, you might think that a 28-200mm zoom lens is too big and bulky for street photography, but in reality, it's one of the best lenses for candid shots. The ability to zoom in from a distance means you can capture people naturally without them noticing. In places like Ueno, I was able to stand back and shoot authentic street moments without drawing attention to myself. Unlike a wide-angle prime, where you have to get up close to your subject and risk them noticing, the Tamron's long focal range lets you blend in. It's almost like shooting with a telephoto lens, but with the flexibility of zooming out when needed. For street photography, this lens actually gave me more creative freedom. I could shoot both intimate close-ups and wide environmental shots, all without switching lenses or moving too much. One thing to note is that this lens doesn't have built-in stabilization, but when paired with the Sony a7C II's IBIS, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. Whether shooting handheld photos or video, stabilization was rock solid. In low light situations, I could drop my shutter speed really low to let in more light, and the images still came out sharp and detailed. Even when zoomed into 200mm, the IBIS kept things stable enough for video shooting without needing a gimbal. I originally picked the Sony 35mm f1.8 for night photography, but I found myself using the Tamron even in low light. At f2.8 on the wide end, I could capture neon street without needing to push my ISO too high, and at longer focal lengths, where f5.6 is the max aperture, the IBIS helped me shoot at lower shutter speed, so my shots could be kept bright and sharp. For a super zoom, the Tamron 28-200mm is definitely sharp enough. Details looked crisp, colors were natural, and at 200mm, Backgrounds had a nice blur for portrait. The center sharpness is great, though the edges can be a little soft at longer focal length. I think the biggest downside is flare problem. In bright sunlight or strong backlighting, you will notice some ghosting and lens flare. A lens hood helps, but it's something to be aware of when shooting towards the sun. Even though I had two great prime lenses with me, I barely used them because the Tamron 28-200mm was just so much more convenient. It made my trip way easier. No constant lens switching, no worrying about whether I had the right focal length for the shot. I could just focus on enjoying the moment and capturing what caught my eye. And despite its larger size, I never felt like it got in the way. In fact, for street photography, it worked even better than I expected, letting me take candid shots from a distance without people noticing. That's something I didn't realize I'd appreciate so much until I started using it. Of course, in extreme low-light environment, you probably still need a prime lens with a larger aperture, but for me, the convenience and versatility far outweighed those small trade-offs. Looking back at my photos and videos, I don't regret using this lens for most of my trip. If I had to pack again, I might still throw in a prime for fun, but honestly, the Tamron 28-200mm would be the first thing in my bag for a long trip like this. I have another video shot on my SMC2 paired with the Sony 35mm f1.8. Feel free to check it out. I'll see you next time.